I need you to give me an introduction for my podcast.
Welcome to the Beef Illington Show.
Alright, yeah, fair enough. Hey guys, welcome back to another installment of the Beef Illington Show. I'm your host, Dave, and on the Beef Illington Show we discuss the 80s and the 90s, growing up in the 80s and the 90s. I'm 41 years old. I was a kid in the I was born in 83, so I was a young child all through the 80s, and then in the mid and early 90s was my childhood, in the early 2000s. And it was really, honestly, it was a way better time growing up, and I'm sure anyone who's listening who was around back then can attest. That's why 80s and 90s culture is so popular right now. That's why people like me who just grew up during the time are starting little YouTube channels where we're talking about our stories, because you know what, it was a lot of fun back then. So anyway, today, since we're getting into the Christmas, Christmas is right around the corner, I have a few of my DVDs out, because I'm still a big DVD guy, DVD and Blu-ray. I still love home video. It harkens back to a different time of the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, certainly. But all right, so some of my favorite Christmas movies that we're going to be discussing today is I have in my hand A Christmas Story, classic. National Lampoon's with Chevy Chase Christmas Vacation, classic. Home Alone 1 and 2, classic. And then the Rankin Bass, those stop motion animated Christmas specials with the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the elf who wants to be a dentist and stuff like that. They did a whole bunch of them, but those are amazing. So we're going to talk about a little bit about each of them. So anyway, the first one I was going to go into a bit was, I was trying to decide to myself which one has the earliest memories, and I'll be honest with you, these all kind of, I think I was seeing these all around the same time, and these are still my favorite Christmas movies. I don't care. I don't watch Elf. You know what? I like Will Ferrell just as much as the next guy, Step Brother, and Ricky Bobby and all that stuff, and SNL. But wasn't a big Elf guy. I didn't find Elf that funny, and people regard it as a classic. Doesn't really hit it for me. The Grinch, the live action Grinch, I think is nightmare fuel. That is horrifying to me. That's not a Christmas classic at all. Maybe perhaps the old animated one from the 70s. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. That's actually a great song. I'm gonna play that. Listen to that later. Play it later. But those movies don't hit. Those movies don't hit right. It's all about these old school classics, and A Christmas Story really is just so amazing. Obviously, I was, I think they still do it. TBS does the 24 hours of A Christmas Story. And that was a staple all through my later childhood, okay? You know what I mean? Every Christmas day, because it started at 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve, they started playing A Christmas Story for 24 hours straight. With commercial breaks and stuff like that. And you'd pop in and pop out, because it would be Christmas Eve, and you'd put it on, and you'd catch a little bit here, catch a little bit there, and then the next morning, and by the end of the day, by the end of Christmas Day, 8 o'clock p.m. on Christmas Day, it would be the last showing of it, you would have caught the entire film. Not in one sitting, but in little increments here and little increments there, and maybe you watched a couple parts a few times and this and that, or maybe you didn't want to see a scene, so you came back to another, you switched off and went somewhere else. But anyway, it's really a fascinating kind of thing they did with that movie. They definitely made that movie like a cultural thing, and it's amazing what a marketing and merchandising juggernaut that the film is now. I mean, there's that leg statue is such an iconic thing. It's really kind of creepy, but it is kind of funny that the dad had gotten that. It's such really makes you nostalgic. What's the mark of a great period film like that is that it can make you nostalgic for a time that you weren't even around for. So I was born in 1983. And that movie's about like the 50s and stuff like that. But you can totally be nostalgic for a Midwestern 1950s Christmas. You understand it, you get it, you understand that world. They make it very tactile and real. Bob Clark is the director of that, and he was an absolute legend. I mean, just an absolute legend. I am enjoying a bit of my morning roast right now, in both sense of the word. So we're gonna have a little. We're gonna just put a little bit in our cup here. Oh yeah, I mean everything from this movie made me want to have a get BB gun. You know what I mean? I'll try to open it up over here. I don't know if the sounds are going to be kind of annoying. Yeah, the Red Ryder. Actually, I was in. I went to the Bass store the other day, the Bass Pro Shop, and they had Red Ryders there. Actually, they had Red Ryder guns that looked just like, it was the product from inside the movie, and it was really cool. And I was checking it out, but the gun itself is pretty lame. I mean, it is like a little kid's like toy. I mean, fair enough. I guess that's what it is. I mean, I guess he was a little kid in that film, so it wasn't like he wasn't getting like a high powered, CO2 BB gun, which is like I love shooting those in my backyard and stuff like that. Yeah, but it was like it's almost like plywood and like pressed tin, but whatever. I get certainly if you're 10, 11 years old, it's gonna be pretty sweet. You know what I mean? It's pump action. Got the lever pump action. So yeah, but I'll tell you one interesting memory of this movie that I have. I'll share a personal memory. I went to an elementary school that was like very small. It was a public school, but almost like a private school. It was just a small, actually it was not small, it was a very large brick building. But it was small in the sense that it was a small community. There's only 70 kids in each class, in each like grade, right? So like 5th grade, there was only 70 kids in the whole grade, all right? Maybe 70 to 80 or something like that, okay? And so in 5th and 6th grade, I remember this, the last day of class before winter break, before Christmas, in 5th and 6th grade, they took the 5th and 6th graders down to the library, and there's nothing like a late 80s a late 80s elementary school library. All right, everything was still, growing up, being a kid in the late 80s was really fucking awesome because everyone had like the sweaters on and those mats where you could play with the cars with the roads like painted on them. Everything was way more simple, right? I'm sure now if you were to go to elementary school, it's way more advanced. And we had a computer room in the library with like 4 computers that had Prodigy on it. All right, this is before AOL. This is like mono-screened, monochrome black screen, green text. Okay, this is this room that I'm talking about in this library in elementary school, where were they? All right, so I'm getting all over the place. All right, well, they would bring us down to the library, and then I'll tell that Prodigy story in just a minute. They used to bring us down to the library the last couple of hours before it was the end of the school. All right, the end of like the day. And they would wheel in a television. This were the days we had a wheel in a television. I'm sure it was a VHS player. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure it was VHS. And they played A Christmas Story. I remember it was like the dude administrator insisted on it. Like it was like his thing. He kind of looked like the dad in the movie. He was like a older middle-aged guy with like a horseshoe bald type of thing, but he was like stern, mean, but like a good dude. You know what I mean? He was like a good guy, but he was not. It was just one of those types of old school like dudes. He definitely meant well for the children and to like manage the school properly, but he was certainly not like a pushover or anything like that. And you didn't want to end up in his office, but he did. Looking back, he must have had a heart of gold because I remember him. This was like his thing. All right, this is something that he insisted on, and he brought all the so this is like they got 140 kids pretty much, and it was a pretty large library, and there was plenty of seating, and all the teachers and aides and stuff like that, and we would sit around, and we watched this movie, and it was my first introduction to it, and it was really, it was pretty wild. I'll be honest with you, it's kind of crazy actually. I don't think that they would. It shows you how it was a different time because I don't think they would. I think you would get in trouble now if you were showing this movie to 5th and 6th graders, right? Tell me, leave me a comment leave me something in the comment section and tell me what you think. If you're a parent or if you're a kid or whatever, if just would they But someone, is this considered? I'm trying to look at it right now. Is this considered, politically incorrect or not suitable? Fifth and sixth graders were pretty young. I'm trying to think. Is there anything super inappropriate? I mean, the leg thing is a little strange to explain to fifth and sixth graders, I suppose. There was a joke where the bowling ball goes in the guy's lap and when he crushes his plums and he starts talking like this. That's that's pretty funny though. I don't know. I don't think that's inappropriate. All right. So what's next? What do we got next? Oh man, you know what? The next one, Christmas Vacation, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. This is another old school classic. All right. There's going to be plenty of people that talk about all the classic moments and this stuff like that. Obviously, my favorite character is Cousin Eddie. All right, obviously Cousin Eddie is the best one. He rules. Excuse me while I have a bit of sip of my coffee. Cousin Eddie definitely is the star of this show. This is another great movie that makes you nostalgic. Well, I think this movie, I was around for this in the sense. I mean, this movie captures what that time period was, the late 80s, right? And I think that this movie, if you were a younger kid, if you're in your 20s or if you're in your 20s right now, essentially, and you don't remember this time period, I think this movie can make you nostalgic for that time. This is, going to the mall, the setting up the house with decorations. This is classic, when boomers were young, still in their 40s. This is what boomer world was like in their 40s. And when the world was being run by boomers, when they were still in their 40s, and this is what the world was like. And you know what? Honestly, it wasn't such a bad place. Just everything from the way they had the magazines. Yeah. Classic. Oh my God. So my friend Charlie, from this is Charlie. I brought him. I'll bring him up again in other stories. Charlie is literally my first friend. He's friend number one. At a company, there's employee number one. Charlie, friend number one. Met him when I was in kindergarten. Okay, you know what I mean. The last time I spoke to Charlie was a couple years ago, but it is kind of wild that I do have his number in my phone. It's kind of wild that the kid I met on the first day of kindergarten, I'm 41 years old, I could pick up the phone and call him or send him a text message. I apologize for the drinking. He had a VHS of this movie. And Charlie had a nice setup. He had a bunch of VHS players in a bunch of different rooms and stuff like that. So his parents had a really great... This is New York where basement culture... New York in the 90s, basement culture was huge. People were finishing out their basements and stuff like that. And people were getting... this was the era of those giant square big screen TVs. And the first iterations of surround sound and THX on you can go to the store and buy a VHS tape of the Terminator, and it had the VHS, the THX, sound tester thing and all this stuff, and when it blows you out of the thing. And then Maxwell with their tapes and all this stuff. So it's funny how all that stuff was on tape, but it was the first iteration of high luxury home entertainment. And my friend Charlie's dad loved that stuff, so it was always a ball going to his house. His basement was the best because he had he had the big screen TV, and then he had a smaller TV for his video game system. That's the true height of luxury, back then, especially in the late 80s and early 90s. If you're rocking the main TV, and then you're rocking a smaller TV for the video games. His dad loved baseball and sports, so it was being in a sports bar almost because fully finished basement, very comfortable leather couches, sports memorabilia all over the walls, all over the walls, legit stuff too. Okay, Mickey Mantle autographs, a lot of Yankee stuff. We were in New York, so a lot of New York stuff. Yankees, Giants, Jets. Mostly Giants, actually. I think he was a Giants fan. This was the era of Phil Simms playing on the team, and Lawrence Taylor, LT. Oh man, yeah. So Charlie had VHS. Well-to-do family. They had TVs and VHS players all over the house. Well, they had an upstairs now in the computer room. All right. So now on the second floor, we had his access to his computer. And then also another television with a VHS player. So when his parents were hanging out downstairs, so now they're 2 floors away because his parents are in the basement, we're on the second floor. All right, we knew all the movies, and this is like, geez, 8, 9, 10 years old. So this is like 91, 92, 93. Our hormones were just starting to bud. So we knew all the movies that we could cop on VHS that had some like boobage in it. All right. So what was big for us? Well, our big movies, any time of the year we would go up there, but Christmas Vacation was high on the list because of that scene in the mall. Would drive us crazy back then. All right. I mean, listen. Obviously, we put it on. It brings back memories, and that woman is absolutely beautiful. But man, that drove us crazy back then. There was the mall scene with her, and then also she comes back and does the flashback scene where she's coming out of the pool like nude or whatever, and that's another scene that used to drive us wild. But we had that, and then we had Terminator 1, because they do show boobs in Terminator 1, okay? Terminator 1, and then Revenge of the Nerds. Well, we're going down a whole other rabbit hole. That could be something for like another day, but so yeah, we used to watch Christmas Vacation. Whoops, sorry. Oh. Because, for more reasons than one, I suppose. Now I just watch it because it's a good Christmas movie. And when that scene comes up, I just kind of laugh to myself because I say, oh my, what used to get me going when I was a kid? But yeah, Christmas Vacation, highly recommended. You guys should definitely be checking that out. All right, you know what? And then, because with those two movies, I was already, Christmas Vacation and A Christmas Story were already finished and completed by the time I got into watching those films, right? So I had never seen those films like in the theaters. Those were already like a home video type of situation for me. So now the next film that I'm going to be talking about, the next two films, really, we're just going to kind of talk about the memories a bit. These are my first Christmas movies of my generation, where I remember going to the theater to see these. I remember them being released. Macaulay Culkin is probably, I think, close to my age. Let's ask ChatGPT what year Macaulay Culkin was born. Hey, good morning. I was curious, what year was Macaulay Culkin born?
Good morning. Macaulay Culkin was born on August 26, 1980. Anything else you'd like to know?
That'll be all, thank you. So there you go. 1980. So I was born in 83, so he's 3 years older than me. Okay, you know what I mean? So that makes sense. He was a little older. Yeah, but still close enough. And I looked Macaulay Culkin back then. This kid was like, every kid wanted to be this kid. I mean, in both sense of the words, like in sense of like Kevin McAllister was like the man, and then imagine like you thought to yourself, wow, look at this young kid's famous. He's in movies. He's acting like he's probably rich. He's probably living like Kevin McAllister lives in Home Alone 2 with the in the Plaza Hotel and stuff like that. We touched on Home Alone 2. Bit that comes up sooner in another story because of we talk about Donald Trump and stuff like that in that movie, which is crazy that Donald Trump is in Home Alone 2. Our president is in Home Alone 2. Our older president and now our new president to be. Okay, Home Alone. I mean, yeah, Home Alone is classic. This was the first movie that was like for my generation, our first Christmas movie for our generation. This really encompassed a lot of stuff about the 90s again, growing up in the 90s. All right, the stuff that you see Kevin McAllister into, again, pizza was huge back then. All right, I don't know what it was, but pizza was a cultural food. I mean, people still love pizza and stuff like that, but we used to go crazy for pizza. And pizza was like in all of it seemed to be like in culture more. So you had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Pizza was like their favorite food. The thing that there was, plays as a bit in the Home Alone movies. Pizza. There was a lot of more pizza commercials. It seems like, I don't know. Again, was pizza just in the 80s and 90s? It was like such a thing back then. Yeah, again, pizza. People still like pizza, but it's not like a cartoon character in the culture today at all. It's just like a food that you can go eat. All right, but back then it was like a character, all right, in and of itself, like pizza, the character of pizza. Yeah, so there you go. So a lot of that stuff. So there's another movie I think that if you were not around for that growing up in that time period, but you can watch Home Alone and totally get nostalgic for the 90s, because it definitely encompasses, it is able to capture what the 90s is all about. All right, and then I don't want to talk too close into the mic. All right, the next movie I will talk about, the next series of like specials and stuff like that. This is not really like a proper film, but the Rankin Bass original Christmas classic stop motion animation, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's just my favorite one. And then there's the Santa Claus is Coming to Town here on my DVD. They've made quite a bit of these. There's the Frosty the Snowman. I'm not a big 2D animation guy when it comes to this stuff. It's all well and good, but I'm a real sucker for that stop motion animation. When I was a kid, there was nothing more magical and crazy to me than stop motion animation. I don't know. 2D animation didn't really dazzle me. I was like, yeah, who gives a fuck? Big fucking deal. You know what I mean? But there's something like stop motion animation. To this day, I still love miniatures. I love train sets. I love, in movies when they used to build miniatures, and then like when the original Star Wars, when everything, all the ships and stuff like that were built as miniatures, and the CGI. I don't. There's something so cool about seeing that it exists in real life. You know what I mean? It is a magical thing. These movies were amazing. All right. There's plenty of stuff on YouTube about how they've went back and they've found all of these movies. They found all of these puppets rather, and refurbished them and brought them back. I'm just kind of opening up the DVD case and checking it out. We're definitely going to be popping these in and watching this as well for the Christmas season. I'm going to get those out. Yeah, so good times, guys. So yeah, those are my favorite Christmas movies. I think those movies just really totally capture what it's like, what it was like growing up in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s for Christmas. Even if some of the movies are older, these were staples and these were a part of the landscape. You have to remember, media was different back then, so there wasn't all this streaming stuff. There was a bit of home video and a bit of what you got on the television, and these were always the staples. So when you get fed the staples, they make an impact with you, and it really is kind of like a special thing. So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and this has been another installment of the Beef Illington Show, and I would like for you to take care and comb your hair.